Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Shop Talk. Today at Shop Talk, we got a lot of great questions from users and viewers on the previous episodes, so we're going to jump right in. I'll be joined by my co-host Glenn. How you doing, Glenn?
I am doing well, Dave.
Good to hear it. What do we got for questions?
Yeah, we got a few. The first one, I think, I found it quite curious. It's from DIY Dave OK, and he shares a name, so let's put him
Well,
first.
there you go.
He wants to know, when you were at Microsoft, how did you deal with programmers who were ultimately discovered to be technically not quite up to snuff or not understanding how things worked? Were they mentored, moved, or just fired?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and I should reiterate, or not reiterate, I should state plainly that I'm talking about the 1990s when I was there, not currently, because there've been a lot of layoffs, and I don't know what the system for selecting who gets laid off is today. So anything I say about what happened in the 90s doesn't have any bearing or implication on people being laid off today. But at the time, we didn't have a big issue with it because the hiring was really selective and strict. I mean, I got in and I was like, felt I was really lucky to get in there. You know, I came from a small city and I thought, hey, I'm one of the smartest people I know. Then I got there and I was like afraid to speak because I didn't want to look foolish in the room, right? So it's a high bar to get in, and the interview process was pretty merciless. And so there were very few people that weren't technically really good by the time you got through that process. Now, there were a few, and two things would happen. If that person was smart analytically or gifted in some kind of design way or analytical way, but just couldn't code with the rest of us, then they might look at a program management job. And that's not to say that program managers are devs that can't cut it. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you can get people who should have been program managers but pursued a technical path when their gifts lied elsewhere. And so those people you try to save and move into a different role where their gifts are better used. And for the people that just, probably shouldn't have been hired in the first place, they used to have something called Performance Improvement Program, or PIP. And so you weren't allowed to transfer internally, you weren't allowed to do a couple things, and you had to bring your performance grade up within a certain number of months or a year, or whatever the deadline was. And if you couldn't do that, then you were managed out, which really meant you got laid off or terminated. And so I only had a couple cases of that. People, one guy worked for me and another guy worked next to me that I saw that happened. But people could also, you could be a really smart guy or a really smart girl, and you could be a programmer, and you could have a bad year or two. I mean, I had a couple of years where I was going through deaths in the family and all kinds of stuff, and my attention was elsewhere, so I wasn't as productive as I normally would be. I did a good enough job that I got, a decent review, but not a great review. But I could imagine that if you had even bigger calamities in your life, maybe you get a bad review or two, and you can pull that back out. And so that's what the PIP program was for. It's not to educate people that shouldn't have been hired in the first place. I think it's to save the people that shouldn't be fired in the last place. But
They had some pretty, again, rigorous recruiting and hiring processes. And I imagine those were almost equally matched by their sort of staff development or performance management or those sorts of processes as well once you were in the system.
yeah, we had 6 month review system, and so everybody, unless you were once you get to a certain level, I think it was once a year. But when you were more junior, it was every 6 months, and you would have to write a full, 4 or 5 page review of everything you did in that period, and your boss would go through and have to then defend it to his peers and superiors as to, I only get a fixed budget of how many fives and four, well, not fives, but how many fours and threes and so on I can give. And so who gets the decent, it's bell curved internally, right? And so you've got to bell curve your own staff basically. And of course, everybody thinks, but I've got 4 high performers. How am I going to give one a low and one a high and all that? Well, you figure out a way to do it, and then you mesh that with everybody else at a stack rank meeting. And at the stack rank meeting, it's basically a lifeboat drill. It's like, we have 20 people, but the lifeboat only holds 18. Who goes? And so it's very cutthroat because you're in there naming names like, I would fire this guy next, and I would fire your guy, that slacker that I don't like in email because he doesn't capitalize, or whatever your your nit
But
is
you
with
weren't
the guy.
deciding to fire people. This is just who got into the
Yeah,
certain bandwidths in terms of performance evaluation of fours and threes and twos and ones. So yeah, it was determining merits and that sort of thing and increments and those kind of options. Yes, you had to vote people off the island, right?
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's how, when did Survivor start as a show? Probably right around.
Much after that.
Okay. Yeah, so you guys invented it first. Well, maybe not, but
It's more
yeah,
like The Bachelor. Your boss would come in with a rose, and he would decide which of you to give it to.
Okay, let's move on from that. Let's go to Neolithic Newbie. Says, what do you think about the uptick on the number of new Windows 7 installs happening due to the end of Windows 10? Says he saw it mentioned on LMG Clips, YouTube channel. You heard anything about that? Or
Yeah, I've heard that the number of installs going up for Windows 7 is rather sudden and marked. Now, you have to look at where that data is from. It was from like some website where you allow their tracker software to be installed and then measure it. And so it's like, well, people doing that might be the same people that are running Windows 7. I don't know. The more cutting edge users may not install tracking software intentionally on their PCs. I don't know the full details, but that's how I heard it. So I'm surprised. I mean, people spend $1,000 probably, or $600 minimum on a PC. You need an operating system. If you can't afford one, get Linux. Get something that's up to date and maintained. And if you're saying, but I can't because I need Windows because I got to run this and I got to run this, then pay for Windows. But don't run an old version of anything, whether it's Windows, Linux, Mac OS that's not supported, maintained, and has current security fixes, because you will pay eventually. So don't do that.
you were talking in the gnarly bugs shop talk here last time about AMD and Intel and fabrication and factories and that sort of thing. He says, what do you think about AMD talking to Intel about doing some of the fabrication for them?
I think it'd be great if we could get AMD to get Intel to do some of the production here in the U.S. Then we would have some foundry capacity, and they would have a reliable supplier network, and we wouldn't be entirely dependent on a single source for that kind of chip. So I think it'd be great for everybody. Well, except for TSMC, I guess. But
Well, yeah. So then he says, I also thought TSMC was supposed to be building fab facilities here in the U.S.
they are. I don't know how far along they are in terms of being close to production, but they're also doing it. I don't know if they're going to do like their 2 and 3 nanometer stuff here, or if they're just going to do more pedestrian type chips here. I don't know their exact plans. So.
Oh, and just to be a little current and bring in some geopolitics here, I heard today, I didn't listen closely, but apparently Stellantis is relocating the Jeep Compass manufacturing facility out of Canada into the U.S. But apparently they're going to retool the shop in Oshawa for something else. But that was big news today for Canada. So
Maple syrup buckets, they got to have them. So.
Well, there's that big maple syrup, multi-million-dollar theft of maple syrup. What was that, 15 years ago or something?
Yeah,
I'm
there
not sure
was.
that's
That
been
was awesome.
solved yet, so not sure.
Somebody has sweet tooth.
That stuff's expensive too. I just had to buy some last weekend. My wife made very specific instructions. We need maple syrup and not the fake stuff, the real stuff. And yeah, a jug of that stuff's like damn near $20 at Costco. So hope we're not just.
Now, I should say that
around.
I'm not saying maple syrup to burn Canada. I'm saying maple syrup to burn Quebec specifically, because I assume that Quebec is where this plant was, because I'm sure there was no auto manufacturing plant in downtown Calgary.
No, I think it was Oshawa, probably. It'd be in Ontario. I don't think
Yeah.
they're doing auto manufacturing in Quebec. Yeah, it's definitely that part of Ontario that is south of the 49th parallel.
Well, GM had a plant in St. Catharines too.
Yeah. They had a few, I'm sure. Yeah.
There was certainly one in Quebec. I remember that. So
Yeah, the two guys from Saskatchewan speculating about where the auto plants were in Ontario. Yeah, well, I know where it is on the map. This is a question I dread to ask. Mark 36. Well, yeah, let's blame the guy who asked it. Mark 36 NGNT 44. Were the 2 bug fixes impactful on your AI's high score? He's talking about your Tempest work in the last little while.
Oh, yeah. They were what I would call essential but not complete, in the sense that they had to be fixed, because they were really grim bugs in the code that had to be fixed. But I had to fix, 4 more things before I got any kind of life out of it. And even since then, it's been tuning different parts of the AI to try to get it to learn better in the objective sense instead of the subjective sense. I'm scoring all the rewards, both subjectively for things like, hey, you moved towards the enemy. That's a good thing. Here's a point for you. Versus, hey, you killed an enemy. Here's 150 points for you. And so there's a mix of the subjective and objective. And the game was getting really good at exploiting the subjective rewards,
Right.
but not that much better at actually killing things. So I said, I'm going to take the subjective rewards out entirely and just see if the game even works on just objective rewards. Like, you killed something this frame, that's a good thing. And that's the only information I'm going to give it. And yeah, it learned just about as quickly. Within a million or two frames, it had all the basics down for moving and shooting and stuff. And then it didn't get much smarter past that, which is where I'm struggling. But it learns the essentials pretty quickly.
It's been pretty dependently a struggle, that project, right?
Well, yeah, I keep raising the bar, right? It was like, oh, it can get into the red and yellow with the expert system helping at maximum effort. And now I'm barely running the expert system at all, just enough to give it the initial bootstrapping to say, here's what the game looks like, here's how you play, move around, shoot, track enemies. And after a million frames, I turn that almost entirely off. So.
And I think we were talking sort of casually a few days ago, and I think it probably was the end of last week, and you were like, oh man, I think I might have to give up the Tempest thing for a bit, because it just kind of wears on you after a while of not getting that sort of progress, and all of a sudden things sort of picked up again. But it's been quite a grueling task for it. However, one thing, and I think that you said, yeah, but I know so much more now than I did before. Like,
yeah, it's funny because every day I'm like, I think I know all I need to know about reinforcement learning now. And the next morning I wake up, I'm like, oh, I can't believe how stupid I was the day before and how little I knew. And so, yeah, I've learned an immense amount. So at least, there's value in that. And I'm making progress often enough that it's encouraging enough that I've kept trucking along, even though I should probably take a break and do something else. And I have been. I've been working on the VAX and getting BSD Unix set up on the VAX. And
so is there another time in your, 30, 40 years history of coding and programming where you remember having that sort of thing? You're making some progress and it just sort of stalls and you get fed up and then something else happens, but it's a really long, slow haul?
Never this long. This would be like a beta push where, you're slogging through 100 bugs or whatever, as opposed to, I feel like I've been looking for the one big bug that has been preventing it from working, and it could be all along that there's 15 bugs that I've had to fix. And a beta push, it's not like there's the one big issue you've got to solve for ship. It's usually there's 30 or 40 or however many are assigned to you, bugs that you have to fix for the beta. And sometimes that feels like a never-ending supply of bugs because they keep coming in as fast as you can fix them, and you don't make any traction for months, it seems. You've always got 100 bugs against you, and so it's kind of a similar feeling on they used to call it a death march. I don't like to use that term too flippantly anymore, but for the sake of people who've been on a real one. But yeah, so it can be draining.
So for me, I think the last sort of big project for me that you sort of took on was that whole venture into the LED stuff. And that seemed like a massive, big learning thing for you. And I remember, going through and what ended up in the mesmerizer and night driver and all these sorts of things and controlling the lights around your house and the tiki lamp. I mean, you were learning and processing a bunch of stuff there, and that was all sort of new. It wasn't necessarily bug related, but that was a big learning experience during that sort of 18-month.
Yeah, and you would occasionally get stuck there as well. The LED stuff has been very entertaining and rewarding, and I learned a lot, especially about embedded and microcontroller programming and stuff like that. I did a bunch of work on the mesmerizer and night driver strip just a couple months ago. I made it so that it all runs on the little this guy is not plugged in, but so all of the mesmerizer effects will run on the little displays as well now. So stuff like that, I pull it out every now and then.
Yeah, I've got 3 of them that I have yet to code.
There you go.
I coded one and gave it away. I got 3 more I got to get coded up. Yeah, I don't have one at work myself yet. Yeah, lazy bugger. So I got to get on that. Jamie Wilson, really enjoy your Tempest AI content. What is it about Tempest that appeals to you? And then he suggests, is it the unforgiving, unrelenting gameplay? Do you make game design and controls? Do you also enjoy playing Sinistar?
I do like Sinistar. Sinistar is also a good game, although I really do prefer vector games. And Tempest for me is the ultimate vector game. It came as the first color vector game, and I think the game design is just so crisp and elemental. There's no fluff. There's nothing missing. There's nothing extra. I wouldn't add or take away or change anything about the game design, and that's pretty rare for me because usually with you take a game like Battlezone, well, I like to be able to drive to the mountains. Well, you can't. But a game like Tempest, everything you want to be able to do, you can do, and I love the display technology. The bright vector, high contrast color is a big deal for me. Always has been. I didn't really recognize that, but everything I do, like LEDs and all the stuff behind me here, is high contrast
Yeah.
color. So, and I like a lot of the fact that the game has no sound or has no music. There's no soundtrack. There's no
Right.
extraneous rewards other than it will
Right.
twinkle when you get a free man. You know, the playfield will sparkle with colors. Yeah, it's a very serious game, and it suits me. It's like No Country for Old Men, the movie, but in video game
Yeah.
form. There's no music in No Country for Old Men either. So
No nonsense. Just yeah. One. I mean, I remember playing the game as a kid, but I mean, I had no skill at it. But there's something about just the feel of that rotating knob that just
yeah, they did such a nice job on the input mechanic for that knob with the
yes, you
optical
got that
sensor and
one
the shutter wheel.
rotator and a fire button, and then your super zap or whatever. Like that's it.
Yeah,
It's not 100 buttons and yeah. T-Pain 666. Why did Windows move to a registry from the ini files? He says in the old days you could move a whole program almost anywhere as long as you included the ini file.
I feel like I've answered this. Maybe I did online, so I will give it another shot. Then if I'm
Okay.
repeating myself, humor me. Basically, Linux started out with a set of ini files as well, and so did Windows 3.1. Now, Windows went to a sort of a central win.ini and system.ini set of files, which probably got unwieldy to maintain. And so I think having a central database for all the users and then having each one have their own entry in there, and each user can have all their settings stored in there, and they can roam from machine to machine from a central place. So when you log into a different Windows machine, all of your settings can follow you. Whereas if it's Linux based, then it's not rocket science. You would have to go to the home directory ideally and copy around any ini and config files that happen to exist, but you'd have to know the structure and stuff like that. So it's not as standardized in the Unix world, but it's certainly as effective and as efficient. It's just harder to migrate settings, I think. So it's a trade-off. And I think probably what would have been better is if stuff would have been in the Windows registry, but people didn't put everything in the Windows registry. There's just so much in the registry that no one person can keep it all straight. So
Nick Keeley says, aren't there ways to type check Python?
there might be.
Okay.
It's my first week with Python.
Okay. He says, oh, and where were your unit tests? I guess you're only 1 week in, so.
Oh, well, the unit tests all passed. I do have unit tests, but
Okay. The real
they had all
scooter
the
guy.
parameters.
The real scooter guy said, long-time subscriber, first-time questioner. Oh, and he got on, so there you go. Way to go, real scooter guy. He's got 2 nieces, 10 and 12. Have you run into any educational tools that will help teach kids at that age the basics of coding?
Yeah,
Says
Scratch.
bonus points if it works on Android devices.
Scratch, and it should work on Android devices. So Scratch is a thing where you can drag like an if box, and then you put it on the screen, and then you type your condition. You know, if bananas are greater than 2, and then you can type stuff on the inside of that bracket, which is what happens in the if true case. And you can draw lines to other things that execute. It's really good. Kids love it, and they enjoy putting things together. I remember my kids built hugely complicated. I didn't think, I saw it. It's kind of cute. It's a toy, but my kids are building really complex, things going on in that. So
Wow. Scratch.
little Scratch.
Excellent.
It's either MIT or I forget who did the initial one, but it's a neat system.
And you said your kids are working on it, so it's been around for a dozen years at least?
It's probably been around
More than
almost
that.
20, I bet you.
Wow. So did it like the Minecraft of coding sort of thing?
Yeah, it kind of is drag and drop and plunk things in there.
Yeah. And what you see is what you get. Kelling C, I was wondering the history of Control C, Control X, Control V, and other keyboard shortcuts. So I know they started before you with Microsoft. I thought you might have some insight as to why or how they got to be so ubiquitous.
No, I don't know if they come from WordStar. They'll have to have come initially from some editor, and I should know this. So I'm going to say WordStar, and I got a chance of being right. But don't quote me because it's probably not WordStar. Some program standardized on it, and initially, why would it be Control C? Well, because Control Copy. And why X and V? Well, probably because they're right next to C on the keyboard, so it's just the physical convenience at that point. But that's my guess. So that WordStar started it with Control C for copy, and that you got X and V for their proximity on the keyboard.
So I've recently now got a Mac again. So it was all PC for the last, exclusively PC, because that's what we run at work for the last few years. So now I'm into the Mac operating system again, and they seem to have really, right from the start, I think, adopted shortcuts. And I think that even in the early days, Mac was full of all kinds of shortcuts, where my recollection seems like Windows was slower at it, or maybe I was just slower at it
Actually,
and wasn't
mine's the
aware.
opposite. Windows technically did not require that you have a mouse. So in Windows 2 and 3 and so on, everything could be done through the keyboard. And I don't think that was always true on the Mac. Or at least it wasn't true, on the Amiga and the Atari ST and other systems that weren't really careful about it. But everything you could do on a Windows PC, you should be able to do with a keyboard. And you can activate different windows with Control Tab and get the system menu with Alt Space. And you should be able to do almost everything with the keyboard. And everything had to have an accelerator when it was on a menu item, things like that. So Windows was always really good about keyboard accelerators. Now, the global accelerators for like copy and paste, those may be different between Mac and Windows, and maybe one was more fleshed out than the other. I'm not sure.
Drendor 100 says he's currently using a MicroTik router that he loves, but it's only capable of gigabit speeds, and his ISP recently upgraded him to a plan for 1.5 gigs down. He's been looking at a MicroTik, but they don't have any good 2.5 gig options. Says his internal network is already 2.5 gig Ethernet. How are MicroTik routers managed? Are they like APs and they're added to the manager? Does the router act as a manager itself, allowing me to manage my APs from itself directly?
I'm not sure. I only have ever used the software on one. I used a MicroTik 4-port 10 gigabit switch, that really cheap one, the metal one that everybody has. I got a couple of those. And I've had to, for some reason, go into the firmware, their Switch OS or Router OS or whatever they ship on them, and do something once with them. And I forget what it was. And so that was the extent of my exposure to MicroTik, because we're an all Unify shop here, just by virtue of that's what I bought the first time, and I've upgraded and still using Unify stuff. So I know a good deal about it, but I don't know hardly anything about the MicroTik solutions.
Yeah, he says he's using Ubiquity for all of his wireless access points. So, yeah.
Yeah.
We get into, so when you did that recent Dave's Garage on, you can't buy this on the NVIDIA, GB10? Is that what it is?
Yes.
So Hung Ken Huang says, why not build laptops around this chip?
I bet they will. I don't know if a heat envelope, if you can get away with a Intel chip in a laptop, I'm sure you can get away with a GB10. So it remains to be seen. But 20 ARM cores plus the GPU, if they can cool it, it would be kind of fun in a laptop.
Yeah, you might not want it sitting on your lap.
But you may also at that point want a laptop with, a 40 or 5080 or something in it, which will be slightly more powerful even than a GB10. And will still run Windows and do the things you want to do. It's going to be more expensive, but, well, I don't know. The GB10 is about 4K on its own, so.
That makes for a pricey laptop.
With a 4 terabyte drive and 120 gigs of memory and everything else. But
yeah. Seb Gibbs says, no LLM benchmarks? And then David Lowe says, so when is the embargo over and when can we expect your review video? So
the embargo's over now, so I could have released something today. I'll probably do something in about a week. I've run Tempest AI on it. I've run Olama on it. I want to go and do a project with car recognition, see if I can get that working, and I want to do some desktop AI use with it. Both of those have to wait for a firmware update that I'm waiting for from Dell, and I want to make sure I get that, so I don't want to have an issue with the machine and go, well, the firmware was out of date, you see, so I'm just going to wait, because I'm not one of those guys that's be out on the morning of the embargo with my review. I'll wait until it's fully baked, and then I'll bring it to you.
And if you're going to wait, then these folks are going to wait.
But you'll get all the answers when you get them.
Yeah. Do it right.
Very important ones.
Keiko Genesis, only 120 gig of RAM? I don't care. Especially for what, like $3,800? You just can't do enough with that little memory.
That's a lot of memory, I think. If you need to run DeepSeek 405 billion parameter at home, then you're going to need some serious hardware, because it's going to run, even if you had enough memory. You can buy a Mac with 512, but that model's going to run like dog on even an M4 Ultra. So
And then a couple of folks here too. Hamid Saif says, nailed it. Always a pleasure watching your videos. Now, any expectations on the likely cost? What figures are we talking here?
I think you're talking roughly ballpark 39,
Okay.
37.99.
Yeah.
Depends on the size of the SSD, tax and shipping. You're probably out the door low fours.
Bear Research. It says, it comes to, how does this fit with the, like he says, you can get a Jetson Orin kit for $15.99. So he says, my question is, where does this fit between those two?
Bigger, faster, more better than the Thor.
Yeah.
So if you just kind of have smaller tasks and you don't need a whole lot of memory, then the Thor, well, it's not so much a memory issue as a memory bandwidth and throughput issue. The GB10 is going to be faster than the Thor. So if your model is constrained by performance, then you probably want to go GB10. But if the Thor is fast enough for whatever you're doing, it's a fun box to play with. So.
And then, yeah, the other thing is Ernst Mayr. But when? This has been announced for ages. Bruno Custodio says the same thing. Availability was announced this summer 2025, but there's nothing there. So the real
Yeah,
question
that's
is,
why we didn't talk about it until I said you can't buy this yet, and then 2 days later you can buy it. And I know a guy ordered one, so yes, you can
okay, yeah.
actually
So
get
the
them.
embargo's done, the thing's available. So yeah, there we go.
It
That's
was. I don't
done.
know if they're still available, but yeah, Micro Center had a bunch in stock too. So
Oh, okay. Mark INZ. This is cool, but can I game on it when I'm not using it to power my copilot beater?
probably, although you'd have to run like SteamOS on Linux, and then it would be able to use the GPU. And
Okay.
so if your game runs on Linux, then it can probably work pretty well on the GB10.
Yeah. Tom 1218. It's nice and all, but the countless cheap cloud providers of AI services will have it beat right out of the gate by a long shot. Do you need to run a model in the middle of nowhere and you're too cheap to use Starlink, but will shell 3,000 plus for this little oddity? Maybe this can make sense for the use cases you can count on one hand.
Well, it depends if your use case that you count on one hand is important. Like I have a robot that I can't
Yeah.
wait for a round trip to Utah in a data center in order to determine whether I'm going to hit the brakes or not. You know, you probably want that on site. Stuff like that, factory control, any kind of vision stuff is the latency is pretty high to be sending vision over the cloud. So there's so many tasks that I think if you want to do the AI, you've got to do it locally, and this is the box to experiment with that.
Don't have to worry when your network's down if it's connected directly to the machine that's relying on the information, right?
Yeah, and if you're just doing, or not just, but if you're doing primarily LLM stuff or coding stuff, then this is not what you want for that. You're not going to set this up with Olama and GPT OSS codecs and then set your Visual Studio Code instance to talk to it. You could do that, but it's going to be slower and worse than your experience talking to the cloud. So just talk to the cloud. But when you need inference to happen every time in a known amount of time, then you want it local, and it's a good project box for that.
Knight V2 says, I want this as an offline talking AI smart home assistant. I wonder if that is possible. Is that an idea for a video?
Yeah, it is. I think Network Chuck did a video on setting up a talking LLM assistant about a year ago.
Oh.
So you might want to check his, and whatever he says about that one probably is applicable to the GB10. You would just set up those same tools on the GB10.
Jonathan Rutherham. Got to admit that I don't know half the technical words you use. But I've been using a 128 gig Mac Studio for the last several months working on AI stuff in my own limited way. I see these mini PC boxes coming out with 128 gig unified memory. It feels just like they're playing catch up. So I'm interested in the mini PCs, but I'm not going to be buying one. 128 gig is already limiting. Why are these mini PCs? Why aren't these mini PCs 256 gig?
Do you need that much? I mean, my M2 Mac Pro, I think, is only 128, and I've never come anywhere near hitting the memory limits on that. Now, there are models that are bigger that you can't run, but again, I come back to by the time a model is so big you can't run it on a 128 gig machine, that's going to be a painful model to be running on anything you can afford to run at home. That's my hot take on that. But the Mac for a 120 gig machine probably is better than most of the mini PCs, even the AI Ryzen 9 395 pluses. I'll bet you an M4 Ultra is faster. I don't have an M4 Ultra to test, but
And that's because of the M4 chip then, or
yeah,
the
and you can get it
architecture?
with tons of memory, and the
Okay.
memory bandwidth is enormous on them, so they can talk to their memory at like 4 times the rate of what even the GB10 can do.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
So they say may both have 128 gigabytes, but on the Mac it's like 4 times faster. So
That's why you got to be careful about which statistic you're comparing and which one
yeah,
you glom onto, because you might be missing it on the other end. Ben Cromwell says, isn't a 3090 GPU 96 times more bitrate, though?
I don't know, with 96 times more the bit rate, but it
Okay.
like the 5090 has an enormous bit rate. I forget what it is, 2 terabytes a second or something crazy like that, which is, probably 10 times what the GB10 is. And even a middling 5070 GPU is probably going to have higher memory bandwidth than the GB10 because it's talking to LPDDR5 memory. It's not talking to dedicated GPU memory.
Right.
So when you're shared across, it's not a bus, but, well, it is a bus, but it's internal. When you're shared in that sense that both the CPU and the GPU need to have access to it, it's going to be a slower interface than a dedicated GPU to GPU memory bus.
That'd be like a short bus that the special kids ride on? Or?
Yeah, the short bus.
XABHA, or maybe it's XABHA-X, have yet heard an answer to a very simple question. What problem does the AI of today solve for 99% of people? It's a solution in search of a problem. And those never work out. It always has the same arc. Massive quick adoption, and it trails off into obscurity.
Like the internet. And
Yeah.
we'll see.
I mean, I'm using the AI stuff right now a ton at work.
Are you?
Enhancing a whole bunch of stuff that I know is possible using Power Query and stuff in Excel. That's a little bit or a lot. They're well beyond my comprehension. But boy, I can feed some stuff into Copilot at work and boom, 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 and I can get stuff. I can double my productivity and stuff and get way better results and stuff that there's no way that I'm going to be doing using Stack Overflow or trying to copy someone's code. I mean, it's not even comparable. It's just.
And you learn so fast because you see what's possible and how it's done. And even if the AI is wrong 10% of the time, it's like, well, I can fix that now because I know what's possible.
Well, that's the other thing is it's, I mean, depending what you're asking and how complicated it is, it's often doesn't get it right the first time. So you do it and they go, hey, it didn't do this. Oh, yeah, right. Thanks for telling me. Okay, try that. And you try that. Okay, well, that kind of worked, but this one didn't. And you just keep throwing it back at it. And eventually it gets it and it works. And so, if you're expecting the instant perfect answer the first time on some of this coding stuff or programming or VBA or anything you're doing, it's not. But boy, you iterate through it a few times and I'm getting some fantastic results that are just not possible any other way without a heck of a lot more effort on my part.
Yeah, I'm using it a lot for the Python and Lua coding that I'm doing on Tempest AI.
New stuff.
And so I've learned a great deal from watching what it does. But the things that I've found have been really helpful is sometimes if it's a complicated piece of code, like replace my buffer with an n-step replay buffer, I will have Claude Sonnet 4.5 write it, and then I'll switch my model to Grok and I'll challenge it and say, I don't believe your code works. I want you to go through it. And it's like, he's not going to say, I didn't write this code. That's garbage. It's the new model. So it gets all your context. And now it has to solve whatever Claude Sonnet just did. And often it will have a different enough viewpoint, diversity of viewpoint and diversity of opinion and ability is useful because it'll go through and it'll find things that the first AI didn't find. And, then you can have a third AI or one of the two write unit tests to make sure the code actually works and does what you think it did. And by that time, it's probably got a good chance of working. But if you just say, hey, write me a game with UFOs, and less so.
You've never asked it to do that, though.
Yeah, but the UFOs fell down.
You didn't even have
I didn't specify.
You just look at them the wrong way and they fall from the sky. Yeah. Kenny JP, please do a series on programming and AI from the ground up. I'm thinking something relatively simple like Connect 4 AlphaZero style learning using C for the computation and Python for the neural network and CUDA. Can you help us, Dave?
I wish I could. I wish I had done it that way. I wish I would have started with Tic-Tac-Toe or some other simpler game that was simpler than Tempest. Even Pac-Man or something where your movement is a little less or a little more constrained. Yeah, I should do Pac-Man. Well, Pac-Man's a little challenging in that you've got attribution problems. If I turned down here and then 30 frames later I died because it was a dead end with an enemy coming, that's harder to see when you're building that AI. But yeah, when I get mine working, I do plan to do another end-to-end kind of breakdown on how it all works, stuff like that. The first one I did when I was working on it initially, the video didn't do that well, which kind of surprised me because I thought it was interesting. But I have to look at. I don't want to go code bullet on it, with a lot of rock music
Right.
and
Yeah.
stuff. But
Maybe a little code bullet. Yeah.
I'll bring my guitar.
Neolithic newbie. Did you ever get to attend a Grace Hopper lecture?
I never did. I saw her in Letterman. She's got a good interview if you search for it on YouTube.
Yeah.
She did an appearance with Letterman, and he's very gracious with her, and she's pretty entertaining. And I mean, she's talking about nanoseconds and stuff. It's not you're not going to learn a lot, but she's an engaging personality, and it's a good video to check out and see what she's kind of like as an older lady.
And man, that'd be what? Is that like 30
80s?
years ago?
Yeah.
More? Yeah. And she's wearing her Navy uniform.
I think she's retired at that point.
Oh, is she? Okay. I just can't. Every time I imagine her, I just imagine her with the Navy uniform on. That's
Driving a battleship. Yeah.
There you go. Did you drive them? Yeah.
I'm sure they call it driving.
You captain a battleship, don't you? Or
Imagine you would sail it or...
again, two guys from Saskatchewan talking about ships. Yeah,
Yeah,
about
ships.
as far as you can get.
Let me tell you
about
about my time on the ships in the flat prairies. Okay, I got a random prairie ship story. There was a guy either in Alberta or Saskatchewan. I think it was Saskatchewan. And his family was from I'm going to get some of the small details, like it's Sweden or Norway. It was one of the Nordic countries. And he decides, screw Saskatchewan, I'm out. I'm building a ship. I'm sailing back to Sweden. So he builds the ship. Now, he's in the middle of Saskatchewan, which is like the most landlocked place that you can imagine. Imagine the center of North America. It's pretty
next
much
to Winnipeg.
geographic.
I think Winnipeg.
Yeah,
is the
somewhere in
geographic
between
center, but we're close to Winnipeg.
Well, the problem with Winnipeg is closer to the big lakes. He was not. So he got a team of oxen, and he started dragging this ship cross country on wooden wheels to get it to water. And he made it, a couple hundred miles, and then the ship broke, and he died, and all the oxen had to be shot, or whatever tragic ending it had. And you can go and visit this ship that's now abandoned on the prairies of Saskatchewan. And I'm sure I got a lot of the details wrong, but if you look it up, that's kind of the basic story.
But man, there would have been a hell of a barbecue.
Yeah, well, a lot of oxen and a lot of firewood. So.
Oh boy. Frank Katz, how do you talk to regular people with all that 2, 3, 4, 5 letter abbreviations?
Yeah, when I order at McDonald's, I would like 1 fries, please. I order my fries in binary.
The abbreviations are something else, but yeah, when you're into it and you know it, it flows real nice. But I think I said last time, when I'm reading some of the stuff, I'm not sure if it's a V or an X. Is that really a V or an X, or is it a 5 or a 10 and Roman numerals? And
well, when I did the X64 video, I did little pop-up cards for a lot of this stuff because there were so many buzzwords in that. I'm like, I don't have time to explain them all, but I don't want to just leave people in the cold. So if you want to read the little cards, it'll pop up and tell you. And I should probably do more of that when there is more buzzwords. And I try to, but there's a lot of episodes, maybe there's only 4 buzzwords in there that I throw out and people don't know what I'm talking about. I'll try to catch that.
Yeah. It turned into a drinking game.
Yeah, every time Dave uses a new acronym.
You don't know. It's like, I don't think
fire one down the hole.
Sort of along the similar lines. Oh, this is a bit. I shouldn't respond to this, but I'm going to. Room 5. I had to pause to comment. Either Dave is showing a new flowing aspect of his personality, or AI is doing more than the script here. I guess I'll unpause and watch for the artifacts now. Okay, I'm back. Very interesting, very well presented, but there's getting to be too much AI. I'm here for regular, slightly awkward Dave. Maybe I'll go take a breather in the attic. And I wonder, will Glenn read this?
I just did.
Yeah.
So AI is minimally involved in my videos. I use it for research. I use it for organizing thoughts, and I'll go in with a bullet list and stuff. But it's not crafting in the episodes. So those are it's still me doing it, and I'm still the only writer on the show. So.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's well-written stuff. I can't write like that. I can't speak like that. You've been speaking now in this YouTube forum for 5 or 6 years, so you've got a certain level of comfort there. You've also written 2 books, which
my writing has evolved over time. So, and I write, 5,000 words a week for scripts. So I've gotten better at that, and I've gotten a certain pattern. And people think, I've heard that before. That's AI. I'm like, no, I say that all the time. That's the problem.
I think that's the other
M-dash.
piece too. Like I don't enjoy writing. I don't like doing that stuff. And you and I had plenty of conversations. We've talked about this stuff before, that you actually enjoy that and have enjoyed literature for a long time. And we even talk about music. I mean, I can say some of the lyrics and I might know some of them, but I don't get understanding or meaning them. Where a song doesn't mean anything to you unless you know the lyrics and understand the song. And that's completely foreign to me, but completely part of you. So the fact that you have, that capacity with language is kind of foreign to me and appreciated, but it's Dave writing this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. With autism, language development can be different. I don't think mine is very different. I think I've read enough. I don't read that much anymore. I wish I did, but unfortunately, YouTube and stuff has burned out my dopamine center. So I just like drink from the fire hose of YouTube and suckle at the teeth of my dopamine master. But back when I did read, it helped a lot. And I mean, I started reading car magazines, right? And then I'm sure my writing, if I look at stuff that I saved from, the 80s, it sounds like a car magazine guy wrote it. And it depends what you're reading. Eventually, my reading evolved and my writing would evolve with it. So
Neat. Last question here from us. So, Unspeakable Oath. I think in the You Can't Buy This episode, you held it up and said, "Oh, it's the size of a shoebox." We said, "Shoebox size? You heard it here first. Dave has tiny feet."
well, I was careful to note my feet are bigger than this.
Yeah, but
I was going to say bread box, and then I realized that nobody's going to know what a bread box is for one, and I don't know how big that is, but it's smaller than a bread box. We'll go with shoebox. Well, still smaller than a shoebox. I want to
the
say pack of
saying used to
smokes.
be bigger than a bread box, wasn't it?
Well, you could be bigger than or smaller than a bread box, right?
Okay, the bread
If
box
it was
was
really
the unit of
compact,
comparison.
like you had a computer that could take people to the moon, and it was smaller than a bread box. That
Okay.
was mind blowing.
Okay. And now when we talk about volume, it's how many Olympic swimming pools it would fill.
Yes, or how many elephants it would weigh.
Okay.
Because everybody
Big
knows
Mac?
what an
Cost
elephant
of a Big
weighs.
Mac? Is that also how many Big Macs can you buy?
No, that's always changing.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Billions
jacked up
and-
all the
Billions and billions served.
rates.
Oh yeah.
For better or worse, they raised all the McDonald's labor rates, and so now McDonald's food is priced accordingly, so it's not cheap anymore.
Yeah. That is the list of questions from the last Shop Talk episode and the last Dave's Garage episode. So that's it for me on this one. I'll pass it back to you, and you can tell people what to do, how this works, wrap it up, or just cold end it.
I'd like to use this opportunity to go on a 13-minute rant about economics and how McDonald's should pay more or less than they currently do. Yeah, it's going to get into that. I danced around it. So, no, I'm glad the people at McDonald's make more money, but I also want cheap burgers, so I don't have a solution there.
You don't own McDonald's stock, though, right?
I do not. My neighbor owns a McDonald's, but I do not.
Right. That's right.
Actually, he owns several McDonald's, but... No, it's worth noting that, again, if you think you're watching Dave's Garage, you're actually watching Dave's Attic. So if you stumbled across this episode and happen to enjoy it, please consider subscribing to the channel. Worst case, you would have to unsubscribe after we bombard you with one episode per week. So you're at very little risk. Give it a shot. We appreciate it. Thanks, and good night. This little chair will be waiting for one of you, and a rocking chair for another who likes to rock, and a big armchair for two to curl up in. All next time on Dave's Garage.